Hello everybody, and welcome back to our weekly look at the cryptocurrency market on behalf of Apex Signals. It had been a relatively quiet week up until today, and that's despite a couple of negative influences earlier on in the week. You can see the overall chart there for 1 month. We just switched now to the 7-day chart. Now, most of you have probably heard on Tuesday, the BitHump exchange in South Korea was hacked. Now, it wasn't a major hack. Around $31.5 million worth of tokens were taken. It sounds a lot, but within the context of BitHump being the 6th largest exchange in the world by trading volume, it's not actually that huge an incident. That happened on Tuesday. Earlier on Monday, there was also a report which sounded fairly damaging that came out by the Bank of International Settlement. So I'll talk a little bit more about that report in a minute. But again, the market seemed to hold relatively well. On Tuesday, we saw a weekly high of $294 billion overall market cap, and that was up from about $280 billion last Friday. Now that's since gone down a fair bit. Just heading into the end of Friday, we're at $267 billion. If you take a look over to the right of the chart here, you can see that cryptos have kind of fallen off a cliff over the last 24 hours, and particularly accelerating over the course of this afternoon. It's not entirely clear why that's the case at the moment, unless it's a delayed reaction to events earlier in the week. So if you go back to those events, so on Monday, the Bank for International Settlements released a report on the cryptocurrency market. Now, that report was fairly scathing in terms of the technical limitations that it saw inherent within cryptocurrencies. It focused on the proof of work mechanisms that most of the major cryptocurrencies used, and the fact that they encounter scalability issues as adoption levels increase. And the report suggested that current cryptocurrency technology simply doesn't work in terms of any of them becoming a widely used currency with regular transactions going through, because the blockchain and proof of work process that maintains security simply can't cope with that kind of scale. And to be fair, there is significant evidence that is in fact the case. It has to be remembered that the Bank for International Settlements is very much part of the established financial world, so they certainly do have a vested interest in cryptocurrencies not gaining mainstream traction, at least in a superficial way. So we've seen that the mainstream financial community, especially banks, which are those who will be most negatively affected should cryptocurrencies rise to dominance, so at some point in the future, being especially critical. So that does have to be kept in mind. That report didn't seem to have a huge impact on the market. It's not a new problem that's been highlighted here by the report. Within the cryptocurrency community, people are very much aware that scalability is an issue which has to be tackled on an ongoing basis to arrive at blockchain protocols which can hopefully eventually overcome that issue. So we didn't see a huge reaction here, as you can see on the chart. The BitHump hack did lead to an initial drop in values, which there was subsequently a bit of recovery, and today we've seen that big drop off. This is actually the second hack of a South Korean exchange this month, with CoinRail being hacked on the 11th of June. So it clearly is an issue within the market, and security really is going to have to be increased significantly in the future, and we really have to see that stamped out going forward. So if we look now over to the individual cryptocurrencies, so we'll look quickly at Bitcoin initially. Now, before this week, Bitcoin had seen a little bit of a rally after a poor week last week, and we'd moved up to a high of around $6,700 from last week's low of $6,300. Unfortunately, events of today have seen that take a bit of a hit, and we're down to $6,145 heading into the weekend, and that's over an 8% drop in the last 24 hours. Ethereum has been one of the most affected over this week. We switch now to the Ethereum chart. It's not the Ethereum chart. There we go. So Ethereum has dropped massively over the last several hours, over 10.5%. So it's taken more of a hit than Bitcoin, and we're now down to $470 from $500 earlier in the week. I read a report earlier today which was discussing the conflicting signals from a technical point of view within Ethereum price. There's some positive signals, but also neutral signals suggesting that price could drop to $400 over the next couple of weeks. So we'll wait and see how that pans out. Okay, so moving on to EOS. EOS has also been particularly badly affected by the drops over the last several hours, and it was down over 10% from last night, and it's now over 16% in 24 hours. So that's a fairly hefty drop from EOS. So we're now down to just under $8.80 for EOS, and that's a very, very heavy drop from the beginning of the month. On the 2nd of June, EOS was up at $15.34, and that was of course in the lead up to the end of the ICO, and since then value has been hit significantly. So the old EOS ecosystem really needs to get going. We did discuss last week that there was a validation from the community for the blockchain, the EOS.io, which is now active, but obviously it's going to take time for apps or dApps rather, and others to build up, and they have put aside a significant fund for investing in companies which will specifically use the EOS blockchain, and a big chunk of the ICO raise is going to be allocated to that. So hopefully we will see some upward momentum over the next few months. Personally, as most of you who watch this regularly will know, invested in EOS, and I do have high hopes for it. We'll come back again next week. Really, it's a case of there's still not a lot of information in terms of what may have triggered this drop today over the last few hours. There's no obvious single event right now, so we have to kind of wait and see how it plays out, and it might come back again. There was evidence just before I started speaking here that there was a little blip up, so that could either be a little blip that, and movement keeps going down, or it could be the beginning of a recovery from this sharp drop, but unfortunately the timing of this podcast doesn't allow us to explore that. We might do a little update bonus tomorrow if something interesting has happened in the meanwhile. Okay, so that's all we have time for today. Enjoy your trading weekend. Hopefully we'll see a turnaround of that sharp line to the right of the chart. Pretty much every cryptocurrency chart you care to mention at the moment. And we'll speak again last week. We might speak again tomorrow should anything of interest or particular interest pop up which is worth covering. Okay, bye for now.